govern the current anti-corruption regime, such as the United Nations, World Bank, Transparency International, etc. So we analyze these documents from the very beginning of the regime development up until now. So we selected the documents that best represent the international anti-corruption discourse, because here we talk about a new regime and how to convince people to adopt a new mindset. And of course, the discourse is based on the most influential state and non-state actors involved in the creation and implementation of the regime. And we work on the documents that are most informative about the institutional entrepreneurship work of those actors that proliferate the neoliberal ideology behind the current regime. And then we wanted to have a complete spanning from before the regime establishment until today. And then we analyzed the data with the linguistic analysis techniques combined with critical analysis, because we wanted to find out the kind of language that was used in the discourse to convince people into adopting a new ideology. And we slice and dice the data by the institutional logic for data-driven change, by actors that proliferate these ideology. So all of this data analysis, we follow the dimensions suggested by institutional entrepreneurship theories. And when we analyze our data, we emphasize on literal and theoretical replication. For literal replication, it means that we look for things that happen in a predicted context, in a similar context, should behave in predicted way. And for theoretical replication, we look for contrast. So here, just give you a little bit of the sample of how we got from data to the finding. So we cut the document. So we got the excerpt. So many of excerpts, these are just example of the excerpts. So with each of the excerpts, the document, we gave a descriptive coding, and with the list of codings, then we could create categories. And from these categories, we figure out the mechanisms. So as I don't have much time, I'm not going to go into detail the data, but if you are interested, we can talk after my presentation. And this paper is being reviewed at Social Economic Review Journal. And here I would like to present to you straight to the findings and the lessons learned from the finding. So I will present the mechanisms that we found, the 3 mechanisms that work together in a very dynamic way to create changes. So the creation of dissatisfaction is one mechanism, pitching new mechanism is another mechanism, and generation of commitment and loyalty is another mechanism. So you see that the literature tells us a lot about the current state. Now the literature tells us that we are locked into this current ideology, and the institution gave us, the literature gave us a lot of information on the needs for institutional change. That is very well known in the literature. So our contribution is here, this black box. You see, this is where our contribution is, where the literature didn't tell us yet that how the actors went from here to here. So now we figure out that they had to build the 3 mechanisms. First, they create dissatisfaction by defining the problem, and then they focus on a small issue that can trigger strong reaction. So in this case, you know, corruption can happen at the level of individual, organization, and even at society. But the actors decided to pick only on the bribery. Bribery triggers very, very strong reaction because it's easy to talk to people. It's easy for people to understand. It's easy for people to imagine the impact, the negative impact. So they only focus on bribery. But as people work toward fighting bribery, they have to adopt the wider definition of corruption that Western actors conceptualize and make the whole world to believe. And then by focusing on the small issue with that has good potential for strong reaction, then they would expose the disorders to make people fear about the consequences. And once people are dissatisfied with the status quo, they will demand changes. So this is a very important preparation work to get the public, to get different actors to buy into the idea of revolution, the idea of making changes. After that, the actors pitch the new paradigm. They say that now this world is, now this is the current world is no good. So now they pitch its alternative world, it's a lot better. So that's how they pitch. But now how to convince people that alternative world is better? So they showcase captivating facet of the new paradigm. So in this case, out of many things, they only chose the innovation and education success. They say that because in the Western world, it's corruption free, it's bribery free. And so you see, there are so many new innovations. And then the result of education is really high. And so people try really, and they want to have that kind of success. So they will follow suit. They say, I want to have more innovation like the Westerners. I want to achieve higher level of education like Westerners. And so then the Westerners create a new legitimacy for the adoption of the regime that they're pitching. And after showing a very beautiful picture of the alternative paradigm, then they will indoctrinate actors with the norms and the practice of the model. So they focus on small things, get people hooked, and then once people hook in, they will put all other things in the package. So if you want one element of the package, then you have to take the whole bag. And after that, now, because pitching a new world, interesting, once people hooked, but commitment and loyalty is extremely important. So in order to ensure commitment and loyalty by the new adopter, so first they have to build coalition in order to create a incentive and also coercion for non-compliance. And they create a code of conduct to tell people how to behave and how to follow. So here they will give code of conduct to instruct companies what they should do, instruct countries and governments what they should do. And then they will build allies that can have influence on different aspects of the functions of companies and organizations and other actors in the society. And but then they need to enforce these code of conduct. So monitoring mechanism is very important. After that, they will need to have confessional mechanisms. So if there are any violation of the codes of conduct that they established, there must be some bodies to report that. And then document. Documentation will allow them to reward their behavior that go in line with the code of conduct and punish the behaviors that go against the code of conduct. And then they also use public pressure through social media, through the journals, the mass media. And then they also use coercive pressure, such as if a country needs foreign aid, and they say, if you do not abide by the code of conduct, you won't get the aid. So they will do lobbying to the grantor of aid. The same thing for companies. In order to get investments, to get certain favorable conditions, they have to abide by the code of conduct. And then they set up internalization of the compliance. So these mechanisms will lock people into the new ideology. So here you see it is the continuous loop of creating dissatisfaction with the old regime, pitching a better world that might be a result of the new regime, the new paradigm, and then make people just continue on with the same game. So now, so this is what Western actors do every time they go to a new country, every time they go to a new geographical area, every time they go to pitch to a different level of government and to different industrial associations. And so they create a snowball effect. So the more countries adopt, then the more power, the more coalition they have, the more tools that they can use to lock people into following the new paradigm. And of course, they can always find interesting case studies with a captivating results to convince the new actors to adopt this regime. So now what the so what of the finding? So now so our study here contribute to the corruption literature by uncovering the black box of how international organizations build and reinforce the current anti-corruption regime around the world. We also contribute to the literature on institutional entrepreneurship theory by identifying the mechanisms with which institutional logics are built. So these are the three mechanisms that are not mentioned yet in the literature. And now we find the concrete information. And then we explain the process of the loop from creating dissatisfaction to pitching new paradigm to generating commitment and locking in the process. Now this process shows how actors can use the mechanisms to proliferate a new ideology. And then imagine that if we look at the proliferation of new religion, it's likely it will follow the same process. So if you look at any kind of revolution, so usually you see that the public have to be unhappy with the current regime. If they are not unhappy yet, you have to show the problem, make people believe that there are problems, and so that they will be hungry for change. And then pitching a new paradigm, it could be very complicated, but they will just pitch the things that will be most interesting, most captivating for people to get hooked, so that they really want to buy into a new paradigm and then generate commitment. And now thinking of the companies that want to conquer the market, the same thing. They make you unhappy with the current product, and then they pitch a new product and they find a mechanism to lock you in. So now when we look at, so how can social entrepreneurs create social change? So if social entrepreneurs cannot tell the public that what we are, the world we are living here has some issue. If people are happy with the status quo, if people are happy with the pollution, if people are happy with the social issue that social entrepreneurs identify, so there will be no change. But social entrepreneurs will have to make people realize the problem, and then uh, tell people what is the alternative world. And so, and after that, when people are interested in the new world, then the social entrepreneurs have to create mechanisms for commitment and loyalty. So with this finding, we say that we can learn a lot from the Western actors who have succeeded in proliferating the neoliberal regime. And we hope that anyone who want to proliferate a new mindset, a new ideology, could reflect on these lessons to build the mechanisms according to the three categories that we have identified. So I think my time has just ended, right?
Thank you so much, Professor Thai. I think your study findings is giving way to so many different thoughts and so many different domain areas. Like as Dr. Ashish is working on healthcare sector, so I am sure that there will be so many other new sectors which are going to come up. And I think your study findings will be a lead for all of us to go through. And I'm sure that all of us would love to be in touch with you. And as rightly Dr. Udaiban said, that we would have loved to see you physically in our campus, and I'm sure in the near future we will have you in our campus. Thank you so much for spending your time and showing your dedication and a wonderful study, and the presentation which you have done us is really wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you.